And thanks, Wes. It's great to be here with you today, and I want to echo what Wes said about how fortunate we are to have Senator Warner and his leadership in this really important area of cybersecurity. His efforts are tireless and effective for us in Congress, and I truly do appreciate it. I also want to thank Bobby Kilberg and the staff here at NVTC. This council has been a wonderful resource for us. This is one of many topics that the council has addressed over the years that have really helped to galvanize action amongst industry, academia, and our leadership in Congress. So today I expect to be no different. There is an amazing program lined up for us today. And what I hope to do in my remarks, as Wes said, is lay out a framework for our thinking and the discussion that will follow for the next few hours. So, there was a time, and it wasn't too long ago, I've been in this industry about 15 years working the topic of cybersecurity, and in that time, there was a perception that this problem of cybersecurity was very technical, somewhat obscure, and not something that impacted most companies and certainly not most people and consumers. But I believe that time is past now. And with the daily information that we all receive about cyber attacks at the national level on our infrastructure, to companies in stealing proprietary information, and even the consumer who's impacted with threats that their personal information or financial security is at risk, we're now in a very different place. And I'm glad that we have a forum like this to discuss this topic, because as Wes said, it is going to take all of us working together to have successful outcomes. I think about this as a domain, and those of you who work in the federal industry have long heard us talk about the domains of land, sea, air, and space. Cyber is that fifth domain now. It is a domain in and of itself because it is a place where not only technology exists, but warfare exists. And not just in the traditional sense of warfare, but in the sense that there are sophisticated capabilities that are in place for good and for harmful purposes. And we have to be managing this domain because it is critically important not only to our national security, but also our economic security. Today, we find ourselves on guard from a number of attacks against our digital assets from criminal elements, nation states, terrorist organizations, and they're seeking to disrupt our way of life. We need to ensure that we are staying constantly vigilant to be able to address these threats. So the bottom line, cyber is now fundamental to human advancement, and it must be secured. And this summit, therefore, is very timely because we're going to talk about some very specific paths to ensuring that. It's also appropriate that this summit is being held here in Northern Virginia. I don't want to discount the important work that's going on in Silicon Valley. There is some tremendous capability coming out of that region, but there is no region like Northern Virginia in that it has collected a group of talent. It has the hub of the federal government's efforts in cybersecurity, and we also have phenomenal academia located in this region, from Richmond all the way to Baltimore. And these are great capabilities for us to leverage in this fight, and NVTC is certainly a cornerstone in our efforts to do so. So this morning, I'd like to offer a few additional thoughts on the four areas that Wes outlined. First is policy. Next, innovation. Third, people. And finally, partnership. So I place policy at the top of this list for a reason, because it's fundamental, it's foundational, I believe. Cyber is an issue that policymakers are going to be grappling with for generations, so this is not about finding the easy policy fix that we can put in place today and then move forward. And there are a number of efforts that have already been undertaken. Senator Warner mentioned one, and it was the Information Sharing Act. But despite the progress that we've made, many companies and individuals still don't even practice basic cyber hygiene. And we need to ensure that everyone who uses technology, and let's face it, that's all of us, because that includes smartphones, computers, Bluetooth devices. We need to understand that there are risks and vulnerabilities that need to be addressed in this infrastructure, and it requires us to think about our daily behaviors and how that either contributes or creates vulnerabilities. For example, we may really want to click on that link that tells us a package has just arrived for us, but then we stop to think, did I order a package? Does that really have a destination for me? And if the answer is no, we have to be diligent, we have to be disciplined, and we need to be part of the system that is securing our entire environment. I'm pleased that Congress finally passed the information sharing bill. But you know, it's not a silver bullet because it relies on us in industry to take advantage of it and to actually share information into the network that helps each of us have stronger defenses. We have reaped the benefit of this in Northrop Grumman, and working with many of the aerospace and defense companies, we've been able to thwart cyber attacks against our networks because of information that we had shared from others in industry. And I strongly encourage each of you to think about that participation in your own organization. I also applaud the administration for taking steps to increase collective cybersecurity through the Cyber National Action Plan and also the Cyber Incident Response Coordination Executive Order. These were two important steps forward. But as I said, we still have work to do in policy. I hope that our next president, whoever it might be, and I am not going to comment, continues to progress the previous administration's work and continues to make cyber a national priority. But important though it is, policy is not the only thing that we need to be thinking about. We have to attack this issue on multiple fronts. And the second element is one that we often think about. It's innovation or technology. And as we've thought about the solutions that we need to this problem, Senator Warner talked about how they can't be reactive. We have to begin to think about designing our systems with security in mind. And that includes the software as well as the hardware that we build those systems upon. And a concept that we have used in thinking about this is the concept of resiliency. So I'd ask you to think about what's the most resilient system you can think of. For me, it's the human body. Like many of you, I travel a lot, I spend time on airplanes shaking hands, and I'm exposed to a lot of germs. But my body is able to detect those germs, identify a way to respond to them, and restore my body to a healthy state, all while I'm going about my daily business. I don't even know it's happening. And my body is acting to be resilient and bring me to a state where I can perform. That's exactly what we want out of our systems. And so this thought process around resiliency and working to mirror what our human body has already been able to accomplish is something that we can all think about as we go off to build systems in this way. But as I said, we have to start with that in mind. Because today, largely, we're using firewalls and things that are bolt-ons to protect our networks and systems. We're trying to build high perimeters, but the reality is the threat is already inside, and those are only so effective. And they are not going to secure us against the most impressive threats that our adversaries have to throw at us. And as we know, nation states with those high-end capabilities are not just going after our federal government assets, they're going after corporate assets and also personal information. So it's particularly important for us to think about technology innovation with that in mind. I also want to talk about the area that I think may be the most critical for us right now, and that is our workforce. Wes mentioned that all of this comes back to people, and we simply don't have enough of them. If you think about how our workforce has been put together, it has been built over the last number of years through repurposing individuals who have a technical or engineering degree into this field, largely because it wasn't a field where our universities built programs and encourage students to come to study. I'm happy to say we're making change in that regard, and we're doing that through working together as companies and academia to create new programs. One of those programs that we have at Northrop Grumman is one that is with the George Mason University. It's developing a first cyber engineering program, and it's intended to not only produce great engineers, but engineers who really understand this field and have the applied skills to come into our industry and make a difference right from the start. And I don't mean just the aerospace and defense industry. We're thinking about how this is applied to robotics, building automobiles, thinking about how this applies to infrastructure management with the power grid and water systems. These are skills that really are pervasive across all industries and are of interest to all of us. And with that said, it makes this workforce gap even more critical. There was a study done, and it was published last year, that the information security workforce shortfall is widening. 62% of companies who participated in this study said that they have a shortfall in information security professionals. The survey was done 2 years prior, it was 56, so you can see that the trajectory is going in the wrong direction. And that shortfall is anticipated to reach 1.5 million jobs this year. So this is critical for all of our companies, and we have to be taking action, not just looking for that talent that doesn't currently exist. And that problem is true here in Northern Virginia. In Northern Virginia, the shortfall is amongst the greatest in the nation because we have such a high demand. So to fill this workforce gap, these kinds of partnerships that I mentioned, the one we have at George Mason University, we also have them at University of Maryland, Cal, San Luis Obispo, the University of Cincinnati, all across the country, we're putting programs in place. But we're just one company. We all need to be thinking about this, and I know many of you, through your company efforts, are doing the same, and through that, we will start to put a dent in this workforce gap. So finally, I want to talk then about partnership, because this partnership with academia is one form of partnership. Information sharing is another form of partnership. But we too need to think about partnership in the context of working with our customers and our community to raise awareness. And Mark spoke to this, the efforts that he's taking on in Congress to educate and make sure that this platform is not just understood by the hundreds of us sitting in this room, but that it is understood that it has great national and economic security underpinnings in every industry and is an important effort that needs to be adequately resourced and funded within our nation. This is the kind of partnership that we need, and it needs to be coming from all sectors and all dimensions. So let me just summarize as I bring to a close what I think a summit like this can really do for us today. I mentioned we've got a great lineup of activity, but I hope that you won't just sit and listen, but instead that you'll actively engage, because we're early in this journey, and it is a time where all ideas need to be brought to the table. And that's exactly what a summit like this can do. Your idea can spark the idea of someone else, and we build upon that as we grow together. I'll leave you with some words that I think are particularly relevant to the environment we face today, and they come from a great cultural anthropologist, Margaret Mead. She said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." So I believe that small group of thoughtful individuals is coalesced here today in this room, led by NVTC, and I believe that we do have the opportunity to come up with ideas that in small part will help to change our world. We have that responsibility, and I'm pleased to say that my company and all of yours is here with an interest to do so, and I'm glad to be a part of it. So thank you for your time today and look forward to interacting with you.